Well, again, welcome to the 2 February 2018 edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Today our special guests are Town Administrator Rich Rayner, actually our boss, so I'll be nice to you, Rich.
Thanks.
And School Superintendent Anna Riley. Welcome both of you back to the show. Lots been going on since the last time we talked, and we'll try to get at that. Let me start with Rich, if you wouldn't mind. You know, this is your third year in the job. How do you think it's going?
I think it's going well. We've accomplished a lot. The first year, I think I was in the office for about 6 months, and I presented a pretty robust plan of priorities and initiatives to the council, and I've been steadily working on that over those 3 years. We've whittled much of that down, so now we're focused on primarily, I'd say, 3 big projects right now. Police station, I want to get that on budget, on time. The comp plan, the majority, I think about 3/4 of the elements have been prepared now, and we can talk a little bit later about what the plan is for the rest of that. And then addressing infrastructure needs in the town. I think those would be my focus over the next 18 months or so.
Okay, I know I've talked to you before about this infrastructure initiative. Could you explain a little about that and how it came about and why we need it?
Yeah. My first impression when I came to Portsmouth was that infrastructure improvements had not really been focused on for a while. So that has been a real initiative of mine. One of the things that we need to do as a town is we need to do something like what happened in the school, on the school side. There was a mandated infrastructure assessment on the school side. I wanted to take that over to the town side and do something similar for the town. At the same time, I had heard that Sean Brown, Town Administrator in Middletown, was also looking to do something like that. So I reached out to him to see where they were with this initiative, and they had already started a conversation with a consultant and pretty much invited myself in and proposed that we approach this as a collaborative effort between 2 towns. It's a way to have some strength in numbers and actually achieve some savings. So we're not both doing individual contracts, one contract.
Sure.
So there'll be some savings, and we'll both get what we want out of that project.
Okay, now this company, I think you told me the name, was it?
It's yeah, they're on the master price agreement. It's Jacobs Engineering is who we're talking to. I imagine at some point we'll have to RFP before we get too far down the road, but we've been talking to them about how we should approach this project. We were kind of given a boilerplate to start filling out this information regarding what our inventory is, what we think the state is, how old it is, what we think the needs are, and then from that we'll build an RFP where somebody will actually come in and do an assessment of our infrastructure. And that's real important because that is what is going to drive our future capital improvement program. We finally got a pretty robust 5-year capital improvement plan in the town, but I recognize that there are some limitations to that. You still run into, in any organization, department heads being very partial to what is in their lane. We need to take a more a higher altitude view of what needs to be done in a town and prioritize. If I ask DPW what their prioritization is, the top 5 things are going to be DPW items through no fault of their own. And we may not have all the expertise required to do a real assessment of our building and infrastructure.
Now, would this entail a company coming in with different specialists looking at different?
Correct. You would have architectural specialists, engineering specialists, civil engineers, and we would get a pretty comprehensive report. And we're looking to have that report done pretty much the same way that the report was done for the school. So we would have, level 1, level 2, level 3 issues that would help drive the prioritization of our infrastructure improvement plan.
Yeah, it sounds like something we probably should have done years ago. In fact, when you look at it, you say, what, do we have no plan?
Well, I said, town is well over 300 years old, and we have some buildings that are half that old that we haven't put any money into.
Yeah, so 380th, just to let you know.
Yes, sir.
We keep track of that stuff at the Historical Society. How about the police department building? We see updates every week or so on Facebook and other things. How's it going?
It's going very well. There's no hiding the fact that the weather has impacted the construction. The bottom line is we experienced a frost, a ground frost, much earlier in the year than we had expected, than the engineers had expected. So that has slid the timeline by about 2 weeks. The contractor is laying on us extra shifts. We've rented a ground heating unit so that they can get the foundations and the walls poured. So they're looking to re-sequence some of the events in the plan to get back on track. I'm obviously very concerned about that, and we're going to hold their feet to the fire, but of primary importance to me is bringing in this project on budget. I'm not as concerned about a 2-week slippage in time because I think we're going to make that up as the weather warms up. But if you go over there, you can't get on the site, but they do post some pictures. And you can see from outside the fence line that the walls have been poured, the foundation is poured, and we're looking to have structural steel come in the 3rd week of February, and you'll start seeing something go up.
Yeah, this weather has not been a normal winter here.
No.
We had that 2 weeks or whatever it was of really sub-zero temperatures. It was tough. You know, talking about strategic plans, what is the status of our comp plan?
Yeah, like I said, I think the planning department now has about 3/4 of the comp plan elements written. There are gaps in those elements, but we knew that going in. The next stage now is, while they are finishing up the remaining elements, we will RFP out for a consultant that will come in and
to actually write it
and take those elements, fill in all the grunt work that needs to be done, graphs, charts, and that kind of stuff, and run the charrette or charrettes prior to presenting this to the planning board. So while it has not gone as quick as many people would like to see, I can only say that I came in, realized it needed to be done, together with Guy Bissonette, have taken ownership of this. We're driving it, and I would just say that more has been done in the last 12 months than the last 12 years. So we're getting it done.
Yeah, I think anybody who's had anything to do with the comp plan process knows how complicated it is, how many things there are to it, and how many of them can be contentious, which slows everything down.
It's very difficult. You have people that are very passionate, whether it's economic development, how we will allow farmers to utilize their property, to how we're going to address climate change. And all of these things are required by the state to be in a comp plan. So I can't afford to get into an argument around the sea level rise or climate change issue. I just have to, you know, not me, but the town has to address it in the comp plan. And we hope that now in the next phase, when we get the consultant, there's money in the planning budget this year. There will be money in the planning budget next year to pay for the consultant. The RFP is just about written to take it to that next level, and I anticipate by I don't remember the timeline, but I think next fall we'll be ready to get this before the planning board.
Yeah, well, Gary Crosby's been doing yeoman work on this thing. Every time I go in the town hall, he's doing something to do with the comp plan, so it's a tough job. It
is tough, and everybody has their opinion. It is going to be a town document, and people do get listened to, but you have to get words on paper, and that's the difficult thing.
Anna, let me turn to you for a second. One of the things that just came out was a survey that put us in the top 500 school districts in the country, and that's out of almost 10,000 school districts. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On the one hand, and what does it mean on the other hand?
So that's actually the second study that put us there for last year. So the World News Report also does a ranking of schools where we were put in their silver level for the same things, and they measure the same things. So they look at AP, both the scores, but also how many students participate in AP. They look at our graduation rate, and they look at our SAT scores. So those three things combined, they have their own rubrics and metrics, and they rank schools using those. So it's a nice pat on the back for us, because we know we're not where we want to be, but we're also trying to make progress, and then getting kind of highlighted by an outside group is just a reminder that we do good things, but we have to keep working.
Yeah, well, as I say, congratulations
Thank you.
to all your people
Thank you.
who made it that way. One of the things I thought was interesting when I asked you what we should talk about was you're talking about getting engineering, I guess, learning or teaching from K through 12.
So we've done a lot of work in that area. So much like the town, we have our own strategic plan, and we have our own capital plan. Our strategic, when I got here, the strategic plan was already developed. It had been developed by the school department, and it had a lot of focus on STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And so the STEAM initiative really is tied to all the engineering standards. How do we get children involved, hands-on, deeply involved in engineering? And over the last, this is my 4th year here, over the last 4 years, we've grown that from kindergarten through high school. So now all of our students in the elementary schools are exposed to lessons from code.org. Many of our teachers are trained in coding, and they are meshing coding into their regular work. We have a makerspace in both elementary schools where kids go in and they program little robots. They can record themselves on the iPad and have a green screen and put things in the backdrop. They're really learning all those skills that come from the engineering standards. Same thing at the middle school. We have robotics from grades 5 through 8. We also have added at the high school and at the middle school a program called Project Lead the Way, which is an engineering curriculum. At the middle school, it's really about exposure, so we're starting that with the 8th grade. We've had some teachers trained, and kids will have a even broader exposure to all of those disciplines. At the high school, we're using Project Lead the Way and applying for a CTE program, a Career and Technical Educational Certification from the state, which would let all of our students have a credential when they graduate. We already give our students at the high school the opportunity to earn a STEAM credential by taking so many courses in those disciplines. So this would be another pathway to getting that credential. It's also recognized by the state and the federal government, so we would get some support for funding for that program. The Project Lead the Way courses at the high school are very well subscribed to. This year we had almost 200 students sign up for those engineering classes. Right. So it's definitely something of high interest for students, but also will provide them with the technical skills to decide if they want to go into a career right after high school or to continue on in that field when they go to college. So having that credential will give them both those opportunities. Our goal is career and college ready, but I'm not sure how career ready we make anybody when they graduate. Yeah. So these opportunities allow us to provide students with some credentials, something they can put on paper and put in a resume to actually be getting a job that is a livable wage.
Yeah.
So we're really excited about that, and that's growing. The other thing it allows us to do is tuition in students from other districts for the space that we have for those programs.
That's really great, because I don't think any high school kid knows what he wants to do. When
there are a few, but they're rare, yes.
And that's why I've always felt that, people should at least look at the military. For, if nothing else, they spend 2 years, they see what the world is like, but they also have all kind of training that's there. But this is a great, I think, opportunity here in the school level to do this stuff. So I applaud you for doing that too. Getting a lot of applause today. We mentioned too safety issues and safety updates. I guess it was last week, a few days ago anyway, we had an incident at Portsmouth High School. And you want to just talk briefly about that? Because it seemed like the system worked.
So I'll say parts of the system worked, and definitely there are some parts that we need to improve upon. So one of the things that I noticed when I came here 4 years ago was that we did not have a lot of safety or security plans in our school buildings. And part of that is because this is a wonderful town, and you hadn't had any incidents, and there hadn't been a reason to feel unsafe, except that I think what we learned this week is it can happen anywhere. Even in a beautiful small community like Portsmouth, something can happen. And we did have a teacher who was injured. She is doing well. She's fine. She's got some bumps and bruises. I'm sure that there will be some emotional things she'll have to deal with, as anyone would going through this. And the same for our students. I'm grateful that none of the students were physically injured, but I'm sure some of them will be traumatized by that event for a long time. And we need to make sure that we do everything in our power to try to prevent that from ever happening again. So, like I said, some things worked well, but there are some things we can definitely improve upon. We've had debrief meetings with the chief of police. I've had lots of parents emailing, calling me, and we've been putting together, all the recommendations and all of the things that there was a staff of the high school meeting where they put forward some recommendations. A lot of the recommendations are already in our 3-year safety capital plan. Last year we came before the town council and proposed this to them. We had set up a safety committee that was comprised of school folks but also town folks, the fire and police chief, Rich Rayner, representation from the whole community, and we had these 3 years of recommendations. After this, I really feel strongly, and I'm going to recommend to the school committee, that we move years 2 and 3 ahead together. We can't wait for these security improvements.
Yeah, and the next time might be really dangerous.
I'll say, I feel terrible for everyone who was involved, but I'm grateful that it wasn't as terrible as it could have been.
Yeah, and it sounds like the kids in the gym there did the right thing.
They absolutely did. They were the ones who called 911. The teacher sent them into lockdown. I mean, but after it all, it has to happen before they do all that. So, yeah. And that one of the things that definitely broke down was communication from the gym to the main building.
Now, is there any, part of being prepared is education. Mm-hmm. Have there been any sessions with students about what to do if, or?
So we have drills. We have lockdown drills. They're not situation specific. Maybe that's something else for us to think about. They're kind of general. We do have training for the teachers. We had a safety training for the teachers, kind of around like, here are the basics of safety and security. We have crisis plans for all the buildings. Yeah. But the thing is it's all well and good to have them and even to do the practice drills, but then there's always that human reaction when the crisis actually happens.
Well, that'll always be there.
Right.
There's no question about that.
So we will continue to work on that, but even just some of the basic security things in our plan just need to happen.
Well, and it sounds like your resource officer was right on top of it, and she was listening to the
so our school resource officer,
Maddie Perry's a good kid.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful that we have our SROs. They are a really important part of our community, and if she was right there. She was the arresting, she was the person who was the first to get to the suspect.
Rich, it just dawned on me, is there any such thing like that, some kind of training or anything about, for, say, the town hall?
It's remarkable that this happened. I mean, it was just a week ago that we had our training in town hall on how to respond and react to this scenario. But I'll just echo what Anna just said. This needs to serve as a wake-up call. We've been talking on the edges about needed security improvements. We've gone with the chief of police, the fire. We've discussed with Dan, Anna, technology that's out there and available, and we just haven't implemented it. For instance, in the town hall, there are measures that we need to put in place, as simple as locks or see-through ballistic windows. But we need to start seriously thinking about those things and bring them up forward and expend the resources to implement those measures earlier rather than later. We can't afford to have this happen again.
Yeah, it's probably a function in everywhere about money, but there also, I just wonder if there may be grants or anything like that available out there. But I applaud your efforts, at both of you, keeping this thing in the public's mind and and taken the lesson for what it is. I think it's a good lesson. Like you say, it wasn't anything really serious, which was good.
Serious enough, I'm going to
No,
say.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm grateful no one was seriously injured.
Yeah. Now, Rich talked about the need for an infrastructure assessment of the town, which you've already had done at the school. What are the plans going forward for repairs and things?
So we're actually getting ready to do our next 5-year plan, so we'll be kicking that off in the spring. So in order to receive reimbursement from the state on any of our projects, we have to put together the 5-year comprehensive plan, as Rich was mentioning. So for us, it's a function of if it's not in the plan, then we don't get reimbursed from the state so that we can recoup some of the funds to do that. So we are getting ready to wrap up our 5-year plan. The last 2 things on the list are windows at Hathaway, I think, and I know a roof project at 2 of the schools. We're actually going to move those forward for next summer. So we're always kind of a summer behind because we can only do major work in the summer. Actually, we're doing Hathaway windows this summer, so that must be in this year's plan. So for the next time, I think it's 2 roofs.
Yeah, this goes back to another thing I was going to bring up at the end, but it's involves both of you. That's the shared kind of facilities director that you have in Matt Murphy. How is that working out from both of your perspectives?
From my perspective, it's wonderful. He's engaged, he's energized, he's well respected by the crew. There is a lot of overlap between Matt and our DPW. They work very well together. I have regular meetings with him. Couldn't be happier with the maintenance plan that he's put in place for the town facilities. And he's been extremely responsive. It's been an absolute success story as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. He's an expert in his field, so you can count on his opinions. He's put together a preventative maintenance plan for the schools also. I mean, that's really important moving forward. You can't wait to repair things that could have been in a good place if they had been taken care of all along.
You're talking to 2 old Navy guys who know how things fall apart if you don't do the maintenance. Well, that's great. I spoke with him briefly, and he seems like a really nice guy, so good. I'm glad it's working out.
Yeah.
Anna, what is the story with testing in the schools now, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure, it feels like that's changing every year, so we have to keep addressing it. We had been taking the park exam, which, as you know, was part of a national movement. It turns out not so national because not everyone took the park. And one of the things that I think people struggle with is there's a lot of comparisons between Rhode Island and Massachusetts. We're neighboring states. Why can't we do, what Massachusetts is doing with education? And so one of the steps that Rhode Island is taking to kind of ramp up what we're doing is they worked with Massachusetts and have decided to adopt the Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System. So in Massachusetts, they have created and built their own test, and they call it the MCAS, the Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System. So we've purchased that same test, except that we're not going to call it MCAS because we're not going to use Massachusetts. We're going to call it RICAS. So it's the Rhode Island Comprehensive.
Very original.
Yes. So, but it will give us some good data, and it will allow us to make those direct comparisons to Massachusetts because we'll be taking the same test. There'll be, lessons to learn. There'll be places we can look at. They already have a lot of resources available because they've been taking it for quite a few years. So we'll be able to use those resources, almost all of which are free.
I guess a lot of people look at Massachusetts as kind of a role model.
Right. They're the leading state in education. They've been ranked #1 for quite a while now.
So we might as well learn from them.
That's right.
Okay, that's great. We've only got a few minutes left. We're under just about 4 minutes. I just wonder if I could ask you guys briefly to outline what are your priorities going forward in the coming year?
Sure, I've already touched on them, but I'm really going to concentrate on 3 major areas. The police station, bringing that under budget on time, getting the comprehensive plan finished, working with the planning board to get that ready for town council approval, and concentrating on the capital improvements that are scheduled for this year. The Glen Stables, starting work on the Triple S fields, and conducting an infrastructure assessment of town property.
Now, you guys are starting the budget process, I would imagine, right? You're probably halfway.
We are deep into it.
Deep into it right now. Are there any issues or concerns? Well, I'm sure there are. On the town side about
No, as I stated at the kickoff meeting in January, I don't anticipate any big surprises in the budget this year. There's no big changes. We are going to try to move forward some security initiatives, so that will have an impact on the budgeting, but there's no big changes planned this year.
Yeah. We'll see how pay-as-you-throw pays out, or works out here. It just started yesterday.
Yeah, that is one area that will have an impact on the budget. I was directed to see what the impact on the tax levy would be if we were to fold the transfer station operation at Headley into the tax base. I'll present that to the council and let them make their decision.
Yeah. Back to the future, huh?
Back to the future is exactly right.
Okay, Anna, how about you?
So we will continue, we're wrapping up our strategic plan, which again has that focus on STEAM and all of that engineering work we've been doing. We've also been expanding our one-to-one for students. So next year, all students in grades 6 through 9 will have a computer they take home with them every day and can have over the summer. We'll also be one-to-one for grades 3, 4, and 5, but they will keep those in school. Those won't actually go home with them. We'll prepare them for that responsibility when they get to be 6th graders. Some districts purchased their one-to-one right out and just bought enough computers for everyone. We decided to go slowly and do a lot of training with teachers and students so that they're valuable learning tools, and I think that's really growing and it's becoming something that's really adding value to our students' work.
Now, do you usually get Chromebooks, or are they
We do get Chromebooks.
PC like this?
No, we get Chromebooks because then we don't have to worry about memory or even the cost. Chromebooks are very inexpensive, and they all use Google Classroom in the cloud, which is what our teachers are using with them. So it also allows students to access all their work from home.
No, through an internet.
Yes.
So people have to have internet access.
Yep, they do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, very exciting year coming ahead. I just want to mention a couple things and that may interest you and your students, perhaps. Anna and Rich, everybody in the town hall is already going to be involved in one of these. And this is our annual Founders Day, where Historical Society and the town, we bring the compact, the 1638 document itself. It's kind of incredible, down for people to see, to look at. We do it under guard, and it's got a police escort. It's very, very serious stuff. It's going to be on 7th of March, which is a Friday this year, from 11 to 1 in the town hall. So that might be something to tout for anybody you know on the outside that's never heard of this stuff, because it's fascinating. We got a lecture coming up on the 12th of February about the Battle of Rhode Island. That's another thing going on. But the other one I wanted to mention to you specifically, Anna, is we're doing our second annual school history trivia contest for the middle school and high school. It was very successful last year, and we're going to be doing it again. And
I think the middle school won last year, right?
Middle school won, yeah, absolutely. And now those kids in the middle school are in high school. So
let's see if they can keep it.
We'll see what happens. But I'd like to invite both of you guys. It's going to be held at Melville, Gulfstream Grill down in Melville again. But I'd like to invite both of you guys down to see this. It's really quite fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. And thank you for joining us. And we'll see you again next time on Portsmouth This Week.